about the fingers, and this is part one because there's quite a bit to say about the fingers, so I've split it into two sections. So we'll talk about the setting of the fingers and the various meanings if they are sitting lower and if the spaces are different. So as you can see here, the top three fingers are fairly evenly set, but the little finger, the Mercury finger, is sitting much lower on the hand. So that is called low setting. So that's what we're going to be talking about. Moving. Okay, as you can see, I've named the fingers: Mercury, Apollo, Saturn, and Jupiter. So not all hand readers use those names of the planets and gods to describe the fingers, but it was originally linked to astrology, which is why the fingers are named after the planets: Jupiter, Saturn, Apollo, and Mercury. Each finger is ruled by those planets and they take on the characteristics of those Roman Greek gods. So the personality is seen from the fingers. And when we look at the Mercury, we see qualities of communication, the ability to learn, the ability for business, sex. What I mean by that is like your intimacy, whether you are shy or whether you are a little bit more outgoing and open, and diplomacy as well. Generally, the ring finger, the Apollo, describes expression, creativity, how social you are, and your style and your sense of style, your ego as well. The index finger also talks of the ego. The Jupiter shows ambition, self-esteem, confidence, and leadership, idealism. So we're going to be discussing those. The middle finger, straight down the guts, self-control, law, seriousness, and the boundaries. So the middle finger is the middle of the line, so it's the boundary. Moving along, if I can get my mouse working. So firstly, the finger settings. Typically they sit evenly, as I mentioned before, or will have only a gentle curve. But when they sit lower than the standard, due to maybe overdevelopment or underdevelopment of the mounts beneath it, it can reduce the quality of that area involved. The finger spaces can also portray characteristics, especially if there's more than usual amount of space between the fingers at the base of the fingers. In general, the wider the space, the more open and carefree the personality. So we're talking about this space here. The wider this space, the more personality is open, and the fingers set close together show a more cautious nature. It's quite normal for this gap to be quite close together. It shows a sense of security in the person. Firstly, we want to talk about the low set Mercury finger, because when it's set very low, it suggests an underdevelopment of the traits of Mercury. So in particular, it can affect the areas of business and practicality, especially with personal finances. However, you have to be careful that it can be offset by other features. For instance, if there is a good length thumb, that will definitely offset a low set pinky as far as practicality in business. And it also affects the ability to communicate well. So the language and speech might have been an issue at a young age. So let me explain how it becomes low set. When a person is growing, usually all areas grow and develop at the same rate. The bones underneath are growing at the same rate. If there is a problem at a certain age, such problems such as, okay, they struggled learning, they might have struggled to learn to speak words, school, parents, if one of the parents was missing in their life, for instance, that can affect. I see this a lot in split families where the child only grew up with one parent from a certain age. So this area of Mercury slows down in its development and sometimes stops altogether. In this hand, specifically, this girl was a single parent family where her parents were divorced at a young age. She was probably about 7, and the rest of her hand continued to grow, but the area of the Mercury became underdeveloped because she obviously had struggled between living with the mum or living with the dad, and it caused her developmental problems for that time. But she has since managed to be very successful in her career when she grew up. So this was a picture of her hand when she was younger. And she still has the low set pinky, but she has other features that offset and balance that out. So whenever you see a very small pinky or a very short, low set pinky or small pinky, that can suggest issues in the family, parents, one of the parents. Next, so got all this information here. When it's very low set, it can refer to sexual or emotional immaturity, especially if the finger is short. So their emotional needs or feelings of insecurity may be issue in relationships, and that can go back to the potential problems with the family. And also creative talent is often present with this kind of a feature, but they might daydream about it more. So the creativity might be expressed more privately because that Mercury is all about expression. So it might be something that they do for fun as a hobby and not as a career per se. And written down there again, a strong thumb can offset this trait. And she does have a strong thumb. It's quite well developed and it's quite long. And I'll talk about thumb lengths in another video, but I'll quickly mention it here. How to tell if it's a strong thumb is its length. So when you line it up, if it lines up anywhere in the first phalange of the Jupiter finger, it shows it's a long thumb. If, when you hold the thumb close, if the thumb only reaches to say here, that's a very short thumb. Okay, moving. Take a while this video. What else have I got here? Okay, so this is what I talked about before. So the low set Mercury finger can infer to a history of deprivation or inadequacy at a young age, whether due to hardship, setbacks, or an absent or overly nurturing parent. So whatever the cause, the obstacle that it presents is that of difficulty connecting, verbalizing, or being naive in emotional or sexual matters. If with a weak thumb, or a weak thumb meaning thin or short, that may show that they seek an unsuitable, more dominant marriage partner, just to balance out their weak side. And if you want to read any of these on picture, you can pause the video here and have a bit of a read of those. Now, the low set Jupiter finger. That lessens the qualities of the mount behind it. And the mount of Jupiter represents a lot of the ego and leadership qualities. So it shows a degree of shyness or some sort of a deficiency in confidence, leadership and responsibility. But again, it can be offset by a large thumb. So always look at the thumb. I do have a whole video on that, a couple of videos on the thumb, so look forward to those. Anyway, the low set Jupiter finger can show a lack of courage to stand up for themselves. They might sacrifice what they want to fit in with other people's plans. So decision making might be difficult for someone with a low set Jupiter finger. They might like to have their decisions made by somebody else. And the cause of the underdevelopment could be because maybe at an early age they were rejected by their peers at school, for instance. They might have felt disassociated, not belong to any particular group. And like I said, they can be strengthened by other features, such as if the Jupiter finger is thick, it might offset the fact that it's low set, or if with a strong thumb. Likewise, many people grow out of their insecurities as they mature, so potentially going completely the other way. So the person with the low set Jupiter might early years have some lack of confidence and later on go completely opposite direction. Now we talk about the finger. Right, the space between the Saturn and Jupiter finger. An ample space between those shows initiative, and it belongs to someone who likes to make their own decisions. Independent and ambitious, they prefer to work alone and they don't feel the need to be in the company of others. The Saturn and Apollo fingers are set close together at the base. It's a sign that's very common. And it suggests someone who's private, sensible, and security conscious. Their security might come from things such as a steady career, their partner, or family. They're reasonably cautious in most matters. If also with a straight and long Saturn finger, the middle finger, they tend to make good employees due to their regard for rules and respect for authority. The Mercury and Apollo with a wide space is also common, and that shows someone who acts independently and prefers not to follow trends. Some might regard them as eccentric, a little bit strange or unusual. They don't like being restricted physically or mentally from doing what they want. They need time to be on their own and away from other people quite a bit. Wide spaces on all the fingers is not a very well confined, depending on the circumstances. It does suggest an open and carefree and sympathetic person who's quite approachable and easily acquainted. They love their freedom. They make up their own mind as to what to do. So it's actually difficult to boss them around, because they can tend to act impulsively and quite habitually. So especially if it's on a fire hand, that is with the long palm and the short fingers, that impulsiveness could be regarded as being spontaneous, but in most instances it can be just sheer extravagance, particularly regarding money. with all those gaps, it's as if the money just slips through their fingers. Some variations of the white spaces. So with the free spirit and dislike for formality, they can be rather unconventional and careless about the future. Because it's got that, it's mainly because of that middle finger and the ring finger gap. It shows that they can be gullible and easily influenced by others because they're not so cautious. So they also might not have concerns about their finances or security of a home. From this carefree attitude, it can manifest in a lack of discipline in matters of responsibility, and that could be the reason that it's difficult to hold on to money. It's especially true if with a weak thumb, short or thin that is, also if with a simian line, which is one complete line across the hand instead of two, and an arch-shaped fingerprints on the Saturn fingers. If also with a long Apollo finger and a separated lifeline from the headline, it can depict a gambler. Now that simian line that I mentioned, single line across the palm, if the white spaces are combined with a simian line and a ring of Saturn or a weak headline, the person will not be afraid to break the rules. They will want to have things their way. They might have a tendency to procrastinate, and they don't like being told what to do. They believe in doing whatever they want in the way they want, so they might not make good employees unless they have a love for their work with a lot of freedom to make their own choices. Features such as average to smooth skin, a clear headline with even mounts and square fingertips can offset some of these qualities. And the summary, when all of the fingers are close together, it brings a quality of introversion, whether they're held tightly together or naturally held wide. When the fingers are wide apart, it brings openness. So how the fingers are set determines how the fingers are held, open or closed. The character comes more naturally when the finger is already set apart by structure, not by the way it's held. So if the person holds their hand as natural as possible, you can see where the spaces are. If the person naturally holds it tightly together, that's showing their insecurity or shyness of character. And that is the end of lesson 5, part 1. We will go more about the fingers in the next video. I hope you enjoyed that, and welcome to email me with any questions you have. Thanks a lot. Bye.